symbolizes a fresh start for many adults. It's a blank page to try something new, find a different job, or possibly set some new goals. But for some, the unknown can sometimes be daunting. Change can be anxiety-inducing, and it can be difficult to get out of a rut. Millions of young adults in the U.S. are facing this problem, says Dr. Mark McConville, an experienced family clinical psychologist and author of Failure to Launch: Why Your 20-Something Hasn't Grown Up and What to Do About It. Roughly 2.2 million young adults ages 25 to 29 years old are still living at home, financially dependent, isolated, and lacking direction in life. Many of us have used the term failure to launch in these cases. But what exactly does it mean?
Failure to launch is when we look at kids in their early 20s who aren't really doing the work they need to be doing that's going to take them to adulthood. We sometimes think of them as 22 going on 16.
In today's world, it can be easy to retreat back to the comfort of home and what you know. The pressures of getting into a good college or finding the perfect job after graduation can be all-consuming. And if life is throwing you some curveballs, it doesn't help that the world of social media can sometimes make it feel like everyone's doing better than you.
There are a lot of historical, cultural things. The fact that growing up is a much more daunting task today in terms of the education that's required to enter into today's economy, which is very different from the manufacturing economy of yesteryear. So a lot more preparation. Kids are entering a housing market where it's much more difficult to procure secure housing on your own, often too expensive. Even if you've got that first job coming out of college, having secure housing can be a challenge, which is why so many kids end up living at home. Sometimes it's the only affordable option. A lot of kids coming out of college saddled with debt. So there's a whole host of economic, historical, cultural features that make growing up a longer process.
The challenges facing young adults today are greater than what previous generations dealt with. However, it is possible to overcome these challenges and to find happiness. Yet, McConville says that in recent years, he's seeing more young people who are struggling with how exactly to overcome this hump.
Somewhere, I'm thinking around the 2000s, there was just a sort of spike of these referrals. Kids going off to college 2 semesters and academic probation or not invited back. And they began to just very regularly, I would begin to get waves of these referrals. It's true for my colleagues as well. So it's certainly something is happening historically that is new. Parenting is different. This generation of parents is being asked to do something earlier generations didn't have to do. And the fact is, there is no playbook for parenting 20-somethings. And so a lot of them are just perplexed and looking for support.
McConville says that part of the solution is breaking the dependency tie between parent and child. While it may feel good to cushion your kid from the harshness of life, it only delays their external growth.
There's a lot of ways this generation is especially supported. But when we turn that coin over and we put them in a life circumstance where they need to begin finding their own supports or drawing on their own internal supports, we sometimes find that some of them are overwhelmed, anxious, intimidated, and afraid to take that step forward.
So what steps should parents take to support their child and get them heading in the right direction? McConville says that it all starts with mindset. People in their 20s need to see eye to eye with reality and how to grow from here rather than focus on the expectations that are not being met.
Kids coming out of school, finding that really plum of an entry-level job, very difficult to do. And I have talked to many kids, college graduates in their early, mid-20s, who are working what they may refer to as a craft job, and it's not what they had envisioned, and they're mistaken in their understanding of the pathway to an effective, successful, happy adulthood. They think of it as a highway, and it's not a highway. It's more like a climbing wall. You get a foothold and a handhold, and you look for your next place to grab onto, and the next after that, and the next after that, and you zigzag your way, and eventually you're much closer to something that's satisfying.
The pressures of adjusting to working full-time, finding work-life balance, and understanding that life is a jog, not a sprint, can be hard to grasp. Support is important during these life changes, but McConville says parents should think of themselves more as consultants rather than caretakers.
The role of adults is not so much supervisor, caretaker, but it becomes something more like a consultant. You're on your own, but I'm right here available. And that's a huge theme for parents. That is, I call it the third stage of parenting. You start out as a supervisor. In adolescence, you turn into a negotiator. And as your kids move beyond high school, you should become a consultant. But in fact, what many parents do is it's hard for them to get out of that caretaker role.
Obviously, each situation is different. If a young adult is showing initiative and taking steps to get back on track, support their actions and see how you can help to build momentum. However, McConville says that it's a fine line between each scenario.
The problem comes for parents who are providing that support, food, clothing, shelter, emotional support, encouragement, opportunity, and they see their kid really not utilizing it, but almost using it as a cushion so that they don't really have to step out into the world. They're talking about that job search. They're talking about grad school, but they're not really moving.
And if this is the case, there are small steps that parents can take to stop enabling their unmotivated children. This can mean getting a part-time job to pay rent, car insurance, and handle a phone bill. Parenting in this day and age can last much longer than you might expect, but there are so many tools out there to help both parent and child find their way. To learn more about this topic and our guest, Dr. Mark McConville, as well as his new book, Failure to Launch, Why Your 20-Something Hasn't Grown Up and What to Do About It, visit viewpointsradio.org. This segment is written and produced by Amira Zaveri. Studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson.
Viewpoints returns in just a moment.
2019 was a year of important discoveries about Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Making news this year, researchers learned that Alzheimer's risk genes are different in men and women. This could help explain why 2/3 of people living with Alzheimer's are women. Other studies in 2019 found that vision and hearing loss may increase dementia risk, especially when both sensory impairments are present. There are also new discoveries about lifestyle, according to Dr. Keith Fargo, Director of Scientific Programs and Outreach at the Alzheimer's Association.
A healthy diet and regular exercise are good for your overall physical health, but researchers have also found that they can reduce your risk for cognitive decline and dementia. These healthy habits, along with things like cognitive stimulation, may even help people who are at high risk due to their genes.
Researchers say a simple blood test to detect Alzheimer's earlier is on the horizon, and 2 recent announcements have increased hope for new Alzheimer's drug treatments. To learn more about Alzheimer's research and how you can participate, visit alz.org.
Our schedules are incredibly hectic, and with all the things we have to do, there's not enough time for the things we actually want to do. That's why it's more important than ever to find smart ways to save time without sacrificing quality. How can Idahoan mashed potatoes give you more time to spend doing the things you love? By helping you put delicious real mashed potatoes on the table in just 5 minutes. We start with 100% real Idaho potatoes from local growers, and then we wash, peel, boil, and mash them just like you would at home. After cooking each batch, we simply fresh dry the mashed potatoes so they're ready for you to prepare at home. Idahoan takes the time to create great tasting mashed potatoes from scratch, so you don't have to. Find out more at idahoan.com. That's idahoan.com.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows. And find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints. Coming up next week.
This feeling of I don't have enough time for anything is, I think, everyone is feeling it. Just it's kind of coming from different places a little bit.
What's stressing you out? Finding time to decompress in a 24/7 world. Then,
when people exercise, often they can start off feeling kind of cranky or not wanting to deal with life and other people. And afterwards, they're like, oh, I love people. I'm ready to engage with life.
How minutes of movement can change your mood in an instant. I'm Marty Peterson.
and I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.